समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
In the aftermath of the paused, although ongoing Operation Sindoor, India has launched a multi-pronged diplomatic initiative by sending 7 multi-party delegations to several foreign capitals. Now, this outreach primarily aimed at clarifying India's position on cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan and justifying its military response through Operation Sindoor can best be described as a post-facto diplomatic push. The delegations feature many parliamentarians, notably Shashi Tharoor, who has emerged as a unifying statesman capable of bridging partisan divides during moments of national crisis. So he truly is a national asset. The countries selected for this outreach are a mix of vital strategic and trade partners, as well as current or incumbent members of the United Nations Security Council, where Pakistan presently holds a non-permanent seat. Now, these parliamentary delegations are also being supported by a cadre of seasoned retired diplomats. There is, however, no clear benchmark to assess what tangible outcomes these delegations are expected to achieve. Yet, their formation signals a clear attempt to counter India's growing strategic isolation as tensions with Pakistan peaked following the Pahalgam terror attack and India's subsequent military escalation to signal its tough posture on terrorism. So, how to best understand the strategic matrix of discomfort that India finds itself in? So, in the current strategic landscape, India finds itself in an increasingly complex position, marked by several disconcerting developments. And in my opinion, 4 features need to be highlighted. The first is, despite India's growing stature and influence in global affairs, the aftermath of the Pahalgam attack served as a stark reminder of the limits of that influence. You know why? Because not a single major power agreed to link the attack to Pakistan, even as China and Turkey extended unequivocal diplomatic and military support to Islamabad. More troubling, however, was India's inability to persuade the International Monetary Fund to delay that $1 billion bailout package for Pakistan. And it got delivered while India was engaged in Operation Sindoor. The optics of such a decision were quite problematic. A country fighting the epicenter of terrorism, watching the same state receive a major financial gift from an international institution. This not only undermined India's narrative, but also reinforced a sobering truth that this is and will likely remain a solitary fight for India. Second, while India's decades-long practice of dossier diplomacy, which is submitting documented evidence of Pakistan's role in harboring and abetting terrorism, has had limited immediate success, it remains a long-term strategy to chip away at Pakistan's global credibility, which already is very low. The current multi-party parliamentary delegations are continuing in this tradition, attempting to explain Pakistan's behavior to the world. Perhaps the task now should be less about proving Pakistan's culpability, which is well known, and more about exposing how it misuses international aid and financial bailouts to sustain its destabilizing activities. Third, the more subtle but serious challenge lies in preventing the rehyphenation of India and Pakistan in global strategic discourse. The danger is not rooted in formal policy documents, but in what we refer to as narratives, particularly ones like those put forth by US President Donald Trump, who publicly claimed credit for brokering a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. His comments mischaracterized a serious national security situation as a bilateral squabble requiring external mediation. India unequivocally rejected such characterizations, yet the damage to perception was done. That such remarks came from India's most critical strategic partner made them all the more problematic and embarrassing. Many in India's diplomatic and strategic circles now recognize the need to navigate the Trump era with minimal collateral damage, as his unpredictable style can often blur the lines between strategic partnership and performative diplomacy rooted in strategic narcissism. Fourth, India's response to the overarching impact of the China factor remains rather self-referential than objective. Now, this point will be elaborated upon later as well, but a quick run-through of recent diplomatic activities in the last week alone will help underscore the contrast that gets reinforced by the fault lines in the subcontinent today. Now, these portray an inherent disbalance that faces India when trying to counter it in the lack of doctrinal clarity. And I'll elaborate upon it so that you understand it better. But first, let me ask, what is the purpose and the pathway for countering optics and building these narratives? Now, alongside the deployment of multi-party delegations to explain India's position post-Operation Sindoor, External Affairs Minister Shankars embarked on his first overseas visit since the operation. Now, his chosen destinations were in Europe, Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands, which are three key European nations. The visit came just days after he publicly criticized the EU High Representative's comments urging de-escalation, and he dismissed them as preaching. So there is a question, right? Then why visit the preachers? Anyway, in sharp contrast, the first foreign visit by a senior Pakistani official following Operation Sindoor was made by Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister to its long-standing strategic partner, and no prizes for guessing that it is China. This juxtaposition highlights the divergent diplomatic paths being taken by both countries in the aftermath of heightened tensions. Now, India's response, therefore, appears aimed at countering not just narratives but also diplomatic optics by engaging multiple strategic theaters simultaneously. That said, Pakistan goes first to the indispensable partner. Let's explore these efforts one by one because there is much that needs to be read between the lines. While Germany and Denmark are already part of the countries being visited by India's all-party delegations, the Netherlands stands out as the sole exception, though it remains a crucial partner for India within the European Union. Now, Germany, now under the leadership of Chancellor Friedrich Merz, is undergoing a significant political and military overhaul with formal commitments to transform its national and EU defense posture. As India's largest trading partner in Europe, Germany also wields considerable influence in Brussels, where India is currently advancing negotiations for an early harvest free trade agreement with the EU. Now, the Netherlands, that is India's second largest trading partner in Europe, has become increasingly aligned with India in high-tech sectors such as semiconductors and the role of AI in military technology. Meanwhile, Denmark, that is another important EU player, offers significant collaboration to India in green technology and sustainable investments and so on. So the External Affairs Minister's choice to engage with these three European nations, despite parallel outreach by parliamentary delegations, reflects a sound strategy to deepen bilateral ties across areas of economic, technological, and defense cooperation. But these outreaches fall short of countering China, breathing down on India's strategic choke points in the region. Now, let me tell you about a more serious and often less understood issue when I said China breathing down India's neck. And this is about India's Afghanistan problem. Now, although Indian media noted, in fact mocked, the absence of a grand welcome for the Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister in Beijing, the more pressing issue lies in the deepening China-Pakistan engagement involving Afghanistan. A joint statement from the trilateral framework indicates that the Taliban-led Afghan government is more than willing to integrate Gwadar into its connectivity plans under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or the CPEC, which is a key BRI project. Now, this development runs counter to India's efforts, which have been aimed at reducing Afghanistan's reliance on Pakistan's Karachi port by promoting connectivity through Chabahar, which is a port in Iran. And it is also a port in which India has made substantial investments as part of its India-Afghanistan-Iran trilateral cooperation. And then India is also interested in it because it connects to the INSTC corridor. So the rationale by India here has been to retain influence, which is called strategic depth, in Afghanistan, leveraging factors like Pashtun nationalism and the presence of anti-Pakistan militant groups such as the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, which have historically strained Afghanistan-Pakistan ties. And if you notice, these stories are extremely popular across Indian media houses. But that is just one part of the story. Where is the other part, which is also the more concerning part? China has moved far more assertively in Afghanistan since 2021, significantly outpacing India through trillions of dollars of investments, high-level visits, and a strong focus on managing extremist groups such as the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, or the ETIM, and Islamic State Khorasan Province, which is the ISKP, to safeguard its interest in Xinjiang. Retaining and expanding strategic depth in Afghanistan remains crucial to China's broader connectivity ambitions through Badr. Beijing is also playing the role of a mediator, ensuring that tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan over TTP and Pashtun nationalism do not really spiral out of control and into a full-scale war. Both Kabul and Islamabad remain attentive to China's interests. Pakistan, because China is indispensable for them, and Taliban, because China offers a quicker and a surer pathway to economic development. Does India provide that? Not really. But at the same time, playing all sides, the Taliban is also reaching out to India primarily as a means to counterbalance Pakistan at a sub-conventional level, while carefully not only maintaining, but in my opinion, prioritizing its strong economic ties with China. Now, add to the above China's growing leverage in Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and the entire complication of Turkey getting actively involved in Pakistan and Bangladesh. India's strategic environment in its neighborhood has become more precarious, and this is without a doubt. India's engagement with the Taliban remains cautious, and there is good reason for it. Given the historical precedent of Pakistan and Taliban-controlled Afghanistan co-sharing terrorism as a statecraft tool. Now, India must engage the Taliban without getting too close that it weakens India's position to call out Pakistan's complicity in cross-border terror. And if you look carefully, at the core of this dilemma that India faces lies a fundamental clash of visions. What are these? China's push for a unipolar Asia, an Indo-Pacific dominated by its influence, versus India's vision of a multipolar regional order. This tension is further complicated by Russia's declining ability to help India balance China. Russia's protracted involvement in Ukraine has weakened its global standing and has also eroded the reliability of its defense export sector, which has long been central to India's military preparedness. There is now a growing need for Indian foreign policy discourse to shift toward a more clear-eyed, pragmatic analysis. And by that, I mean one that is rooted not just in diplomatic outreach and communication and narrative building, etc., but actually essentially in doctrinal clarity on how India will implement this new normal with Pakistan while countering China in a very troubled region. This is a feat India's ruling establishment still shies away from. I will be back to track how long does it take, if at all, for us to get out of this closet and onto the realm of doctrinal clarity to guide and synergize our armed forces with our strategic and geopolitical aspirations. Stay tuned.